The pressure fault tripped at 0340 on my third day aboard Kareth 9, and I almost didn't go down to check it. I was there to decommission the station. Not rescue it, not repair it, kill it. Shutdown sequence. Log the systems, cycle the airlocks in the right order, and file the paperwork so the outer system survey maps could update. Solo job, 4 days of work, maybe 5. I'd done 11 of them in the last 2 years. Dead stations in dead orbits, humming to themselves in the dark. And a fault left unlogged could void the decommission certificate. So I pulled on my kit and took the ladder down. Sub-level C was cargo allocation. Old receiving bays, mostly stripped. Someone had cleared out the portable equipment years back. Probably the last crew, probably in a hurry. Given the way they'd left the restraint brackets hanging open, and the floor guides unclipped, people don't leave stations untidy, unless they're leaving fast. Port side. When I got there, I found a row of standard maintenance drums, the 2-meter sealed kind, rated for atmosphere, used for storing chemical feedstock or pressurized tools. 6 of them, racked and strapped. 5 were empty. I could tell from the weight. The 6th moved when I put my shoulder against it. Not the drum. Something inside the drum. I stood there for a moment with my hand against the cold metal, and the pressure reader ticking in my other hand. The reading made sense now. Whatever was in there was breathing, and breathing had warmed the interior just enough to push the seal pressure slightly above ambient. I could have logged it. Biometric anomaly, sublevel C, Bay 3, noted for registry, moved on. I unclipped the drum instead. She was coiled in the lower half of it. Small, the way Orath children are small, which is different from the way human children are small. They fold into themselves, knees to chest, arms across knees, head tucked. Her skin was the color of river clay, and the texture of something older than that, fine-scaled along the ridge of her shoulders. Her ears came to points. Her eyes, when they opened, were amber going gray at the edges. Dehydration, probably, or the bad kind of cold. She had a beacon in her hands, one of the old push-type emergency units, the kind you had to compress manually to broadcast. It was broken. The transmit coil had sheared clean off at the base. She'd been compressing it anyway. Over and over, in the dark, inside the drum. The skin at the center of her palm was raw from it. I don't have a word for what that did to me. I'm not sure I need one. I carried her up to the hab level, and I didn't call it in. I had a reason, and I knew it was a reason, which means I knew what I was doing. The child was Orath. The Orath were the client species of the Veth Coalition, which had been formally dissolved by the Serath Compact 8 months prior, following what the Compact called a restructuring, and what everyone outside Compact space called a liquidation. The ones who might one day matter politically were being processed. That was the word they used. Processed. I didn't know if she was one of those. I didn't ask. She was maybe 6 years old, and she'd been in a drum in the dark, with a broken beacon, for however long it had taken for someone running up from something to hide her there and not come back. I fed her what I had. She ate it like she wasn't sure I wouldn't take it away. She didn't speak. I didn't push. I kept working. That was the thing. I kept working. Logging systems, cycling test sequences, filing interim progress reports with the Colonial Registry through the station's outbound antenna. Everything I would have done anyway. I just did it. With her sitting on the floor of the control room, wrapped in my spare thermal liner, watching me with those amber-going gray eyes. On day 4, she started following me through the station. She didn't touch anything. She stayed 2 steps back, exactly, like she'd been taught that distance. But she followed. The Sarath compact cutter docked at the primary airlock. There were 2 of them. Compact enforcement, the kind with the rank insignia that's just a color, not a shape, because shapes imply accountability. The senior one was polite. He told me they'd picked up a ghost signal from a push beacon on their long-range passive array and followed it to the station. He asked if I'd found anything unusual during my work. I said I'd found a pressure fault in sublevel C. Maintenance Drum 6, Biometric Anomaly. It was in my interim report. He said he'd like to take a look. I said the bay was sealed, pending decommission sequence completion. Which it was. I'd locked the sublevel hatches that morning, because that was the correct procedure, and I had filed the sequence initiation notice with the registry 2 hours prior. He said he'd like to take a look anyway. I looked at him for a long moment. Not hostile, not afraid. Something in between. Or maybe something that isn't either of those things. Just the look a man gets when he has already made a decision, and the decision is load-bearing. I told him that was going to be a problem. The polite one stepped back, and the other one stepped forward, and I understood the conversation had changed registers. The thing about decommissioning a station is that the sequence, once filed and initiated, runs on the station's own systems independent of local override. That's by design. Registry requires it. The Colonial Authority needs a clean, uninterrupted shutdown log, no gaps, no pauses, no anomalies that might indicate salvageable assets were removed without documentation. So when you initiate the sequence, it runs. Every system cycles to its logged state. Every airlock tests its seal. Every pressure junction reports in. The station is, for the duration of the sequence, doing exactly what the paperwork says it's doing. I had initiated the sequence at 0600 that morning. I had also, at 1:55:07, added an annotation to my work order manifest. The annotation read, Salvage Manifest Dependent, Class 3 Biological, Sublevel C Bay 3, As Found Condition, Status. In custody of licensed decommissioned contractor pending registry handover, Class 3 Biological. That's the category. Tools, parts, organisms, anything found aboard a decommissioned station in viable condition that wasn't on the original asset inventory. The contractor has custodial responsibility until the registry processes the handover. Standard procedure. I'd done it before with a box of unfiled machine parts on a station out past the Karath belt. The polite compact officer, once he understood what I'd done, explained to me at some length that the Sarath compact had a prior claim on the asset in question under compact. Restructuring Ordinance 14C. Station, which was 11 days transit from our current position. He told me he was going to take the child. Every airlock on the station was in test cycle, including the primary, where his cutter was docked. The dock lock was holding his vessel in position per the test cycle's seal integrity protocol, which was, again, filed and running. He couldn't leave without my override code, which was registered to me personally and not transferable under colonial salvage law. He told me what he was going to do to me if I didn't give him the code. I told him he was welcome to log that threat with the station's internal recording system, which was also running, and also filing to the registry, continuously, because that was what the decommission sequence required. It's a very thorough sequence. I wrote most of it myself. He was quiet for a while after that. The girl had come out from behind the control console, where I'd told her to stay. She was standing about 2 meters back, the way she always stood, 2 steps, exactly, with my thermal liner still around her shoulders, watching the compact officer with eyes that had gone fully amber again in the last day, not gray, amber. The color they went, I'd learned, when she wasn't afraid. I don't know what he saw when he looked at her. I know what I saw. I saw a child who had been in a drum in the dark with a broken beacon and had kept pressing it anyway. The officers stayed aboard the station for another 9 hours. The sequence takes 11 to complete. They spent the first few hours trying different approaches to the conversation, and I spent them finishing my work, because the work needed finishing. The last few hours they spent in the docking corridor saying nothing, which was fine with me. When the sequence completed, I filed the final report, cleared the dock lock, and watched the cutter undock and burn hard for the transit lane. I loaded my tools and my spare kit and the child into the parts hauler. She sat in the co-pilot seat with the thermal liner and the broken beacon, which she'd retrieved from sub-level C at some point, without my knowing, and refused to leave behind. I didn't argue. If she wanted to keep the thing that hadn't worked, she'd earned the right. The transit to Tessavar takes 4 days from Kareth 9's orbital position. She slept for most of the first one. On the second day, she told me her name, which I will not write here because it isn't mine to give away. On the third day, she asked me, in careful colonial standard, whether I was going to hand her to someone at the station. I told her no. She was quiet for a while, then she asked where we were going after that. I had another decommission job queued on the other side of the Kareth belt. A smaller station, 3 days' work, nothing complicated. I'd done it alone the last 6 times. The hauler had a second bunk. I told her I had a station to shut down, and I could use someone to hand me parts. She considered this with the gravity that Orath children apply to everything, which is a kind of gravity that makes most adults look careless by comparison. Then she nodded. The registry dispute is still pending. The compact filed it, like I told them to. I also filed my response, along with the full decommission record, the annotated manifest, and 11 hours of internal station recording. The Colonial Authority on Tessavar reviewed it for 2 weeks, and then closed the compact's claim on procedural grounds. I got a notification about it on a Tuesday. I was under a coolant manifold on a dead station out past the 4th transit ring. She was handing me tools. I read the notification, set down my comm unit, and went back to work.